Creating Connections Podcast, episode 140. I am Mitch Taylor.
And I'm Vicki Musney.
And today we're talking about chapter 10 of our book, Creating Connections, 31 Days to Building Stronger and Deeper Relationships.
Yep. Oh, I just pulled my bookmark out.
Oh. Don't know where you were.
Got it. I was on chapter 10.
Notice she's got much more notes on my chapters than her own. I'm kidding. Chapter 10.
Because I do the editing.
Chapter 10 is asking great questions. Are you asking great questions of your clients? Find out more about what are great questions you could ask. Just listen on after the break.
That was nice and easy.
What are you talking about? This also speaks to a much bigger issue.
Providing personal solutions through understanding people. This is the Creating Connections podcast with Gitomer Certified Advisor Mitch Taylor and Certified Personality Trainer Vicki Musney.
Welcome back to Creating Connections podcast, episode 140. I am Mitch.
And I'm Vicki.
And today we're on chapter 10 of our book, Creating Connections, 31 Days to Building Stronger and Deeper Relationships. Our book is meant to be a great resource for you. Read one chapter a day, and we are covering chapter 10 in today's podcast.
Yeah, if you haven't picked up a copy and looked at it, maybe you're just consuming it because we discuss one chapter a month. It is going to take you a little bit longer than if you're doing one chapter a day, just FYI, but you'll still get it. But the format was we came up with the 31 concepts that we wanted to touch on. In fact, a lot of them were based on topics that we covered and we encountered in the first 6 months of doing this podcast. And that's when we decided, hey, we should put this book together. So we split up the chapters. And then when we were editing, we pulled out one quote from each chapter to kind of open the chapter. And then you would come back and get it in context. But I just want to read chapter 10 as a chapter that Mitch wrote. And I love this sentence because I think it really sums up what we wanted to say in that chapter. Great questions are constructed in a way that brings you and your client to a mutually beneficial outcome. And I think that's the goal of any conversation, any sales meeting should be a mutually beneficial outcome.
That's the basis of a great question. Great questions are not yes or no or one word answered questions. That's part of how you know if you have a great question or not. Because if it's a one-word answer or yes or no, then frankly, it's probably not a great question.
Yeah, those kind of questions that start with do you, or those are yes or no questions.
Yeah.
But most of the time
no.
Yeah, but most of the time you want to start with a who, what, where, when, or why.
Yeah.
Those are often.
Great questions require your client or the person you're speaking with to think before they respond.
And they require you to think before you ask them.
Yes.
And I think that's always my fear, Mitch, when we talk about this topic. And I remember a long time ago, you actually produced a list for people of questions.
I did.
And I feel like that was misinterpreted by so many. And I've talked to people over the years who have used that as a checklist. And I know from knowing you and working with you for so long, your goal was not to have people sit down in a meeting with that printed list and check them off.
No.
That was supposed to be things to get you to think. And so I think this actually ties in with a later chapter of being in the moment, but that idea of really being present.
Yes.
That's what's going to help you to ask great questions, to ask better questions, more emotional questions.
Being present and actually wanting to know.
Yes.
Actually caring about what you're asking about. Too often in the event world anyway, people ask, so how did you meet? Do you really want to know? If you really want to know, ask the question.
And ask it differently. I mean, even if you use the same exact words, the way you ask it with your face, with your eyes, with
Yes.
leaning in, that's what puts you in the moment. And if your goal really is to connect, which is why we call the book, the podcast, everything we do is about creating connections. That's the goal, that mutually beneficial outcome.
Specifically knowing your client, going back to personalities with Vicky, you're not going to, lean into the face of someone who's possibly a blue or a green that might tend to.
Okay, yes and no. You won't lean in like this, but if you're sitting across from them, you could still lean in like this with your body language. So not like a whole super, in your face, but you can still with your body language. Those of you that are watching, those of you listening, I apologize. But this to me is more engaging than asking it like this.
Right. Exactly.
Can't lean back that far.
And it's important that you think about the questions you're going to ask in advance, and that you truly want to know what those answers are of the questions you're asking. If you're involved.
Again, it's that balance though, Mitch, between planning ahead and being in the moment.
Absolutely.
Thinking ahead, these are some really great questions, or these are the outcomes I need to understand, versus reading them from a checklist and going through.
And maybe you'll get to all the questions and maybe you don't, and that's okay. Because what's more important is that you are in the moment with them, and that it's a naturally flowing conversation, and it's not, the tennis ball, dunk, 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 you want to avoid that, have that natural flowing conversation where it could be very simply a case of dunk and wait, and they get the response and have a conversation, and then you speak. It shouldn't be just bang, 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 back and forth for questions.
But it's that unique balance of planning, thinking ahead of those really great questions and having them internalized so you're not reading from a list. But what we talked about with Jason Jones about listening and, really being present with them. So that may help you deviate from that list. But if your reason, your motivation, for asking the question is that mutually beneficial connection, that actually creating a beneficial outcome for them, and you're fully present, they're going to become better questions.
And the other thing about great questions, asking great questions, is they need to be conversational. They can't be flowery.
Rote.
They can't be rote. They can't be scripted. I mean, real great questions come from the heart.
I think flowery and rote, I think sometimes they're opposite. You didn't finish that sentence the way I thought you were going to.
Okay.
But using too many flowery, big descriptive words, your questions don't have to sound fancy. They just have to sound sincere. They have to be sincere.
Be
sincere. and sound real. Because you're in that actual conversation. Yeah. You can't fake that.
And the other thing about great questions I'll hit real quick is they have to have a purpose. There has to be a reason you're asking the question, to genuinely want to know more.
Yeah.
So what's your purpose for asking a question? It's not just because it's on some piece of paper. It's not just because someone told you should ask that question.
Yes.
That's not a good enough reason. You have to have a purpose. And the next best question to always ask is why? Because that will help you understand the client's purpose, the person you're trying to connect with purpose. What's their purpose? And when you understand their purpose, now you can create a deeper, stronger connection with them. So asking great questions is all about the outcome you want to create with that person, the connection you want to develop. And it should not be a yes or no, a one-word answer. Design them to think, make you think, and make the person you're trying to connect with think, and get to the purpose. of what each of you.
And whether you're reading the book or you've attended one of our workshops or trainings, or you've heard either one of us do a seminar related to this, even loosely, we give you examples of questions that we love to ask and that work for us sometimes.
Right.
But they may not sound like your voice. They may not fit for your goal. They may not fit for your personality. They may not work for that conversation. So don't think that there's magic in the words that we choose. There may be a reason why we ask certain things a certain way, but more we challenge you to put yourself in the moment and find your voice and how you can be conversational and real.
There's magic in your why you're asking the question. There's magic in the purpose of connecting with the person. And so that's your magic.
Yep.
Asking great questions. We encourage you to dig a little deeper of the who, the what, the where, when, why, and the how.
Especially the why and the how.
Yes, especially those last two. Thanks for listening and watching Creating Connections podcast, episode 140. Holy heavens, 140.
Yeah.
Believe it?
It's been fun. Yeah.
This is our mission.
Yep.
Our mission, providing personal solutions through understanding people better. We hope this podcast helps you do just that. I'm Mitch Taylor. Thanks for watching.
And I'm Vicki. Have a great week.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Creating Connections podcast with Gitomer Certified Advisor Mitch Taylor and Certified Personality Trainer Vicki Musni. For more information on providing personal solutions through understanding people better, visit creatingconnections.biz.